Oregon Community Foundation will just have completed the first of what they plan to be an annual report on the state of charitable giving in Oregon. We believe philanthropy in Oregon is of key interest and important to all sectors of our community. Not only has philanthropy traditionally played a key role in developing and supporting our community's most important institutions, but today, the philanthropic sector is being called upon to step in and help preserve and protect programs and institutions that once relied on government support. Today's presentation from the Oregon Community Foundation will be made by City Club members Sally McCracken, Chair of the Board of Directors, and Gregory Chaillé, President. I will do both bios, and then they will speak. I believe they've chosen the order that Sally will speak first, and then Mr. Chaillé will follow her. Sally McCracken is the chair of the Board of Directors of the Oregon Community Foundation. She has long been an advocate of each individual taking the responsibility to give back to the community. A native of Eugene, she has been a champion for the housing needs of Portland lower-income residents. Central City Concern named the Sally McCracken Building an alcohol-free residential program in her honor. Mrs. McCracken is a trustee of Reed College and serves on the board of the University of Oregon Alumni Association. She also has served as chair of the Providence Medical Center Community Advisory Board. Ms. McCracken is a past member of the Board of Governors of the City Club of Portland. She was one of those first women that challenged the all-male City Club in 1976. and made all their worst fears come true by serving on the board of directors. Greg Chaillé has served as president of the Oregon Community Foundation for 7 years. He is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of the University of California, Berkeley, and received his master's degree from San Francisco State University. He is active in both state and national leadership and philanthropic activities. Greg is president of the board of directors of the Washington, D.C.-based Council on Foundations. He is co-chair in the Oregon chapter of the American Leadership Forum, a Portland Rotarian, and member of the City Club of Portland. Mr. Chaillé is committed to increasing philanthropy in Oregon and believes that this goal can only be achieved through a concerted effort that involves a partnership between many different institutions. Ms. McCracken.
Kind of fun to have the presider be as nervous as the presenter. Thank you for the very kind introduction. I was trying to remember how long ago it was when we met. Maybe back in East Cap days, Vern. I'm not quite sure. It's been a long time that we've known each other. It is rather intimidating, but as all people who come to the City Club very honestly say, it is a pleasure and an honor to be asked to address this group. But as Gail mentioned, having been a member of the Board of Governors back in the days in 1978, when the board met every Monday, and every Monday the first item of business was to rehash the speaker from the Friday before. So I know what I'm in for, so it's kind of hard on my mental health to know that that's coming up. The other thing that when people ask me all the things that I've done through the years, I like to believe that you can accomplish a lot if you keep on smiling. And I do try to do that. Of course, at my age, it makes a lot of wrinkles. But we are very pleased today to see a lot of Oregon Community Foundation friends and former board members. Won't name them all. And we have one table of family over here in the corner, Greg and I do. And we're really proud to be here. Greg and I are here to talk to you about philanthropy in Oregon. It is an extremely important topic in our state today, as you all well know. Philanthropy is people giving of themselves to better our collective well-being. As one of our younger donors at the Oregon Community Foundation said recently in a meeting, some people think that philanthropy is when you give to your children's school, but that's not right. Philanthropy is when you give to everybody else's or somebody else's school across town. Philanthropy is when you give of yourself to the community. It's not an act of self-interest, but of community interest. And even though one generally benefits from the improved community well-being, it's not in your own self-interest. We believe the strength of a community's philanthropy is one important measure of its health. It was once said that a real community is when members have a common relation to the center, overriding all other relations. Through philanthropy, we find our center, we find our common relation. But philanthropy is more than philosophy. Philanthropy is action. It is the famous 3 T's, people giving of their time, their talents, and their treasures. And I think no one knows more about that, the value of those, than City Club members who nurture commitment to community through giving of all of those things. I don't know how many of you read Irma Bombeck, the columnist, but she once wrote of a dream she had in which every volunteer in the country, disillusioned with the lack of compassion, boarded a boat, set sail for another land. They just packed up and left, a whole bunch of them. Irma dreamed that she stood smiling on the pier, shouting, "Goodbye, boring banquet dinners. Goodbye, phone committees. So long, disease of the month. No more saving old clothes. No more 3-hour meetings. Adios, playground duty, bake sales, and charity auctions." Then, as the boat carrying the volunteers grew smaller on the horizon, Irma reflected that it served them right to leave. They were just a bunch of yes people. If they just had the nerve to say no, they could have been spared a lot of their grief. But as she returned from the dock, she began to notice things. The hospital was quiet. The rooms were void of books and flowers and voices. The children's wing held no clowns, no laughter. The reception desk was vacant. The senior center was like a tomb. The blind listened for voices that never came. The housebound received no homemaker services nor hot, nutritious meals. The schools were strangely quiet, with no field trips, no volunteer aides in the classroom or on the playgrounds. And there were colleges where there were no scholarships and financial support, so they were also quiet. Irma Bombeck fought in her sleep to get one last glimpse of the ship of volunteers just one more time, because she knew that it would be her last glimpse of civilization as she knew it. Her dream is an allegory that the quality of life depends upon a strong philanthropic commitment. How strong is our philanthropic commitment in Oregon? Quite frankly, the Oregon Community Foundation believes that it must be strengthened. And who are we, the Oregon Community Foundation? We're just Oregonians like you who care very deeply about our state. You will hear from us today that we believe Oregonians have room to improve both in the amount of our giving and in the number of us who participate in giving. But first, while we approach Oregon's record of philanthropy with a critical eye, we are also well aware that the state and its people have much of which to be proud. Many, many fine institutions exist here because some Oregonians have given through voluntary action. Look around this city and this state with a thoughtful eye, and you will find that essential institutions like Reed College, the Boys and Girls Aid Society, High Desert Museum, Saturday Academy, the Black United Fund, the Portland Art Museum, Neighborhood House, Pioneers Courthouse Square, all kinds of things. The list is endless. Many of those things exist because of the philanthropic gifts of some Oregonians. I'm sure you're not surprised, but while the historical role of philanthropy may be understood, it is much more difficult for us as citizens today to define our individual responsibilities with respect to philanthropy. At the Oregon Community Foundation, we believe Oregonians are unclear about our roles for 2 reasons. First, we lack clear information about the scope and importance of philanthropy. And second, we do not have a widely enough shared tradition in Oregon that promotes the concept of giving back to community. We are here to change that, and we need your help. Today, we will present to you the findings of Oregon's first ever statewide study of philanthropy. The Oregon Community Foundation undertook this study because we know of both the tremendous potential and the tremendous need for philanthropy in our state. The Oregon Community Foundation's purpose is to develop philanthropy and to link philanthropy to community need. We manage permanent charitable funds for Oregonians. OCF has been very successful in linking philanthropy to community need. Today, we hold over $102 million in permanent endowment that consists of 240 separate family and individual funds. Last year, that endowment provided $7.5 million to charitable and educational programs throughout the state. The OCF endowment has been developed in just 20 short years, so we know the potential for increasing giving in Oregon. OCF ranks the 24th largest community foundation in America. But our record of success, made possible by the generosity of the donors that we serve, does not just reflect our own effectiveness. It reflects the philanthropic potential we have as Oregonians. We are blessed in this region to have two of the nation's largest private foundations, the Meyer Memorial Trust in Portland and the Murdoch Trust in Vancouver. But these two foundations are based on the very large legacies of just two outstanding individuals. They are the exception in philanthropic gifts. The Community Foundation more accurately describes what can occur through philanthropy. I knew I'd trip over finally. What must occur. The average size of our permanent fund is $375,000, but they range from $50,000 to $9 million. And they have come from people from all walks of life, from all regions of the state. For instance, we have the Carl and Alma Johnson Fund, created by a Portland carpenter who wanted to help Oregon. We have the Nye Family Fund, created by an early Medford orchardist who wanted to help handicapped children. We have the Shelk Family Fund, owners of Ochoco Lumber in Prineville, who wanted to help 6 Central Oregon counties. And we have the William Bowerman Family Fund, created by the educator, former track coach at the U of O, and inventor of Nike's first shoes, who is helping educational and cultural programs throughout the state. These are just 4 examples of how Oregon families have committed to sharing personal wealth to benefit our state. Our donors are indicative of the tremendous potential we have as Oregonians, but we must further tap this potential of giving. To do this, we must develop a greater appreciation of philanthropy and a greater sense of commitment to philanthropic action. Greg is now going to describe for you our report. He gets to do the statistical part, Giving in Oregon. But in turning over the podium, let me leave you with the words of Bill Bowerman, an OCF donor, that capture my own personal thinking. Bill said, "Anyone who lives here and enjoys the tremendous beauty of Oregon has a responsibility to leave it a better place than we received it by contributing whatever we can to improve and make Oregon an even better home." Bill Bowerman has captured the essence of philanthropy, the responsibility we all have to our community to make it a better place than we received it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Sally got to talk about Irma Bombeck, and I get to talk about statistics. So I'll do my best and try to keep you alert. But let me make one correction in my introduction. I just recently went on the board of the Council on Foundations. I think it was said that I might be the chair of the board of directors of the council. Far from it. I haven't even been to my first meeting yet, but maybe I am chair. It is a real honor, as you can imagine, for me as president of the Oregon Community Foundation to work with people like Sally McCracken and Bill Bowerman and all the other people who have come together under the auspices of the Community Foundation to improve Oregon. And you might say that my job is to help people realize their vision for a better Oregon. And I think that is what philanthropy is all about. I work with visionaries. I work with people who dream about the invisible, who dream about achieving just a better Oregon. Sally gave some examples of the tangible things that philanthropy makes possible. They are nothing more than the realization of visions about a better community. It was Robert Kennedy who said that the future is not entirely beyond our control, it is the work of our own hands. And it's that kind of thinking that captures for me the essence of the people involved in philanthropy. Philanthropy is about the possibilities of what can be achieved, not about the limits of our efforts. And that is what our message is to you today. There are tremendous possibilities for increasing philanthropy in Oregon. So we come to you today with a message about the opportunity to grow philanthropy in the state, about the opportunity to grow philanthropy on a basis of tradition that we think is already here. It's an Oregon tradition. In planning this presentation, someone on your program committee asked, is the glass half full or is it half empty? Well, we're here to say that the glass is half full. The Oregon Community Foundation is pleased to present to you the first statewide analysis of philanthropy in Oregon, and this is the first release of our report. There are copies that will be available after the meeting as you exit on the table over here, and you can also get a copy by contacting the Community Foundation. So please take one. I think you'll find it very interesting. Our intent in issuing the report is threefold. First, to acknowledge the essential role that philanthropy plays in our state, and second, to determine how we are doing, which is a key question that we all ask, and then finally, to promote increased giving. As we examined the data we collected, some recurring questions occurred. We each have a place in philanthropy, but what is that place? Where do I fit into philanthropy in Oregon? If I operate a business, what role can I play? How do my gifts compare with national averages? And how does Oregon compare with other states and with the nation as a whole? In compiling our report, we tried to answer these questions. Well, what did we find? The news is not all bad. There is a pulse in the philanthropic veins of Oregonians, but it must be stronger. We found that some Oregonians have a reason to be proud. While ranking only 25th nationally in terms of income, Oregon ranks 19th in terms of percentage of income contributed. And this compares, for example, to our neighbor Washington, which ranks much higher in terms of state income, 11th compared to our 25th. Yet Washington ranks only 35th in terms of percentage of income contributed compared to our 19th. So as I said, the news is not all bad. Our report, Giving in Oregon, looks at three main areas: giving by individuals, giving by businesses, and giving through foundations. We looked only at giving of money, but recognized the important role that volunteerism plays and in-kind donations play in this state, but because of the focus on giving of money, we limited the scope of the study just to that area. Someday we may look at volunteering. To collect the information on giving by individuals, businesses, and foundations, we conducted first a survey of 50 bellwether organizations that we selected, large and small, urban and rural, to really represent the diversity of Oregon's philanthropic community. And we selected those organizations based on our experience with the nonprofit sector. Second, we surveyed giving to United Way organizations in Oregon. And third, we analyzed IRS data that looked at the charitable contributions of all U.S. tax filers. With respect to individuals, we found that individual giving was the largest source of philanthropic income for the bellwether organizations, accounting for 56% of their gifts received. Individuals are clearly the driving force of philanthropy in Oregon, as they are across the nation. However, giving by Oregonians was flat over the last 4 years, flat at a time when personal income was increasing in this state. Perhaps uncertainty about the economy dampened the giving spirit, but we believe this spirit should be growing. In comparison to individuals, business giving increased most dramatically during the 5-year study period to our bellwether organizations, and that surprised us. Business giving in Oregon was growing at a higher percentage than nationally, and business giving accounted for 25% of the gifts received by the bellwether organizations. Finally, foundation giving also increased during the study period. Foundation support accounted for roughly 20% of the gifts received by the bellwether organizations. We were surprised to learn that while total income received by the bellwethers increased 50% during the study period, only a small percentage of the increase, 7%, was the result of charitable gifts. Earned income and government support accounted for the bulk of the increase. In essence, philanthropic spending pales next to government. We estimate that total philanthropic giving to non-religious organizations in Oregon amounts to only about 12% of the total state general fund expenditure, or only about 3% of federal expenditures in Oregon. This finding puts philanthropy into context. As the state has struggled to address the impact of Measure 5, many eyes have turned to the private sector, foundations in particular, to make up the difference. Well, the reality is that philanthropy has little capacity to make up for government cuts, nor is that its role. Philanthropic giving, when done wisely, though, can be a spark plug that combines with other money to lead community change, for innovation, and for other activities that moves Oregon forward. Now, let's look at how Oregon's charitable gifts compare with the U.S. in general. How are we doing? Oregonians demonstrate that they give at a higher rate than the national average, but they give lower dollar amounts according to the IRS data we reviewed. For instance, 29% of Oregon tax filers deducted a charitable contribution, compared to the national average of 26%, putting us 3 percentage points ahead in terms of the number of contributors. But Oregon's average contribution was $300 lower, on average at $1,700 compared to the national average of $2,000. This alone suggests an opportunity for improvement. It suggests that we work towards increasing the average size of Oregon's charitable contributions. We also found in examining the IRS data that higher income Oregonians lag behind the national averages in terms of contributed income. Nationally, the $50,000 plus income group accounts for 68% of charitable contributions. In Oregon, the $50,000 plus group accounted for only 58% of the charitable contributions, a full 10 percentage points below. Turning to businesses, we found that Oregon business plays a very important role in charitable giving. As you know, our state is a state of small, predominantly family-owned businesses. We are entrepreneurs. Our findings indicate that these businesses are very active supporters of nonprofit organizations. Most encouragingly, we found that business giving in Oregon appears to be increasing, as I said, at a rate greater than the country as a whole. National data shows that business giving is increasing at about a rate of 2% per year. In Oregon, we found it increasing at 6% per year, quite a difference. And I think we should pat these businesses on the back. But what we do not know is how many businesses participate in giving. And because of this, the role that businesses play in charitable giving may be misunderstood and underestimated. This leads us to believe that businesses in Oregon would benefit from companies joining together into business giving alliances, groups that recognize and encourage business giving. The Greater Portland Chamber of Commerce has a program called the Business Giving Alliance, which leads the state in promoting business giving through a Lead by Example program. It recognizes companies that give 1% and above of pre-tax profits to the community. Chamber representatives are here today, and there's going to be some information at the back table about the Business Giving Alliance program. In addition to the hard numbers we collected, our bellwethers also provided a rich array of responses to a series of open-ended questions that we asked. What did the leaders of the bellwethers say to us? Well, first, there is almost universal feeling that philanthropy is underdeveloped in this state. Our leaders believe that Oregon has an untapped resource waiting to benefit the state's citizenry. Second, many voice concern that an increasing amount of time must be spent raising money, often at the expense of providing services, and that's a poor choice indeed. Third, our leaders told us that competition for funds has intensified over the last 5 years. There's a greater number of organizations out there raising money, and their development efforts have become more professional. Well, you and I feel that in our daily lives. Fourth, our bellwether respondents feel too few people are advocating for philanthropy today. We are leaderless outside the particular causes of individual groups. And the respondents look longingly at cities like Minneapolis and other communities where there is strong leadership in the philanthropic sector. Finally, our leaders expressed apprehension about the aging of volunteers and the exhaustion of donors. They worry about how to involve the next generation as givers. The baby boomer generation must begin to step forward, our respondents said. These comments come from the organization's perspective. Givers echo similar thoughts, particularly donor fatigue. The same people are asked over and over to do more and more. The giving base is simply not broadening. And that is one of our main conclusions. There is a base of givers in Oregon who are generous, for whom philanthropy is an essential part of the quality of their life. This is the group that holds up our giving averages nationally. But our research tells us that this is a narrow base of givers. For giving in Oregon to increase in any significant way, the giving base must be broadened. An Eastern Oregon rancher captured this need to broaden the base of giving best when she told us that in her town there is a Main Street syndrome about giving. If you need to raise money in her town, the natural inclination is to walk down Main Street and ask all the business owners to contribute. But there are limits to what they can do. The rancher told us that while she is generous, she had never been asked to give. To increase giving, she said, organizations have to veer off the beaten path. They have to find new sources of funds and make the effort to travel up the symbolic dirt roads away from Main Street. Thus, our first conclusion is to increase philanthropy in Oregon, we must broaden the base of givers. Our second major conclusion complements our first. We need to set a higher standard of giving. I noted earlier that while greater numbers of Oregonians claim a charitable deduction, the average size of the deduction is less than the national average by 15%, or a full $300. The question we all need to ask ourselves is, where do I fit in? If I earn $50,000, $75,000, or $100,000, am I giving my fair share? Some argue that the national standard for giving should be 5% of adjusted gross income. The average contribution in America is about half that, at 2.5%. We believe that the standard should be 5%, and that's something that we should aim for. What do you think the standard should be? Our third and final conclusion is that while we believe Oregonians do have a positive attitude about supporting philanthropic activities. Why do we believe we have a positive attitude? Well, a number of organizations that we surveyed have increased giving, sometimes in spectacular fashion, because of well-organized development efforts. And this is included in communities like Coos Bay and Roseburg. And they've increased it because the community has increased their giving because the community has responded. The second reason we believe Oregonians have a favorable attitude toward giving stem from the results of the Oregon Business Council's Oregon Values and Beliefs Study. This study found that over 57% of Oregonians believe it is important to donate money to those in need, and another 25% are undecided on that issue. And having just gone through an election in this state, we believe those undecideds fall into the group that could be influenced into the giving category. So, in this, our 20th anniversary year at the Oregon Community Foundation, we are pausing long enough to reflect on the state of philanthropy in Oregon. We want to reflect about the possibilities that are in front of us. Our conclusions that the giving base must be broadened, that we must set a higher standard and that Oregonians will respond favorably are based on many hours of study. We produced the Giving in Oregon report as our anniversary present to ourselves and to Oregon. It is a document that we hope will stimulate thinking about the role and the level of philanthropy in Oregon. But our report is not just descriptive. We are making two recommendations that we believe will broaden the giving base in this state. First, we recommend that a Giving in Oregon Council be established to promote and to monitor giving in Oregon on a collective basis, and this council would represent the diversity of the philanthropic community, the business community, the foundation community, the religious community, the estate planning community, and it would hopefully release our annual report, Giving in Oregon, as a way to monitor and advocate for giving in this state. Toward this end, we've already had a preliminary meeting with representatives of different sectors of the community, and our proposal has been met with enthusiastic response. The second recommendation is that the development efforts of our state's nonprofit organizations must be strengthened through training and educational programs for lay leaders and board members of these organizations. We must empower volunteer fundraisers to become sophisticated and more effective in getting off Main Street in their quest to increase philanthropy in this state. The Oregon Community Foundation will take the lead in helping to develop this training program. So let me conclude. We know that there are many fine efforts already occurring to increase philanthropy in Oregon. We can only gratefully acknowledge them and say that more is needed. Our goal at the Oregon Community Foundation is to create a stronger climate and culture for giving in Oregon, but we must all work together to do this. It will take a total community effort, an effort that involves the different sectors of the community working together. Oregonians and families need to recognize and discuss the importance of charitable giving at home, at the job site, and in other daily settings. We need to celebrate our philanthropy. When was the last time you discussed your giving with your friends or with your family? Finally, we believe that the future of philanthropy depends upon adult Oregonians nurturing a strong commitment among youth to community service. This is an essential part of the future of philanthropy. Handing down our tradition of community caring to young people is a necessity. Oregon depends upon those who are responsible givers to convey this tradition to others. It is our community legacy. It is our hope that our report, Giving in Oregon, will be used by you and many others as a catalyst to develop a new sense of joy and responsibility in giving back to Oregon. Thank you.
We will now open up the floor to questions, and the first question will be by Bill Crane, who is a member of the club's program committee, and the second question will be by Michael Wells, member of the Arts and Creative Standing Committee. There's one microphone right here for City Club members to ask questions after those two questions.
For the benefit of our radio audience, I'd just like to remark that this room is filled with grant seekers and grant makers, and by my eyes, about 6 or 8 of the city's most notable and generous philanthropists. It's a nice and sort of awesome crowd to have here. Because there's lots of grant seekers and grant makers here, Sally and Greg, I have a funny question for you. You know, we grant seekers are constantly looking over our budgets to make sure our numbers are right and that it's all going to line up, and you grant makers are always trying to discern if we've got our case for support right and if we're really serving the community. And so we tend to be a pretty sober bunch, being awfully serious about our work. So my question for you is, what is the most fun thing, the thing that most made your heart really beat in the past year that the Oregon Community Foundation made possible because of philanthropy by Oregonians?
I don't know how do you turn it on? Is it on? Is it okay? All right. People have asked me that for years. I've always said this has been my favorite volunteer activity because after being a grant seeker for so many years. It's wonderful to give money away. It's especially fun to see what people are doing around the state, the broadening for the statewide perspective, because we are a statewide foundation. Sometimes you get just as much pleasure out of buying a food bank, a freezer, than you do giving $25,000 towards somebody's capital campaign. $25,000 is a big grant for us. I never can come up with just one grant. I'm sorry. We just do a lot of fun things.
Bill, I think the most fun that we had last year was a trip that we took with the staff and with Sally to hold a series of community forums around the state, small group meetings of 30 or so community leaders, and to talk about the future of philanthropy in their communities. And it was just a wonderful, rich opportunity to hear about the many fine things that are happening throughout Oregon at the grassroots level to make the community better. And there's just tremendous citizen interest to move philanthropy forward in the state. And one of the most fun things about that trip was being with Sally McCracken. She can't talk.
Question, I guess, for both of you. There's an increasing tendency for government agencies to be contracting with nonprofits to provide services. In part, this is an attempt to shift funding into the private sector. What kind of impact do you see this having on philanthropy and giving in Oregon?
Well, I would hope one of the reasons that they do it is so that people then can contribute to a private nonprofit. I was on the board of Central City Concern when we took over the detox center, and that was their whole purpose, that then extra money, the county made a contract, and then we could get private funding. Trouble was the same high cost went along with it, so it cost us more money to run it, I think. But I think it is a growing wave of the future. I think lots of people do not want to give to government programs and who will give to a program that they feel is serving a real need in their community. We wrestle with that. When I came on the board 10 years ago, we didn't give any money to things that were really strongly government supported. And we're now re-looking at each and every one of those grant applications with a little more open look, because there are more mixes of private and governmental things. And I think it's probably the wave.
Michael, I would say that the concern we could have with that is that the priorities of some nonprofits get set by public funding rather than by the boards of those organizations. And we don't want to have a situation arise where nonprofits are chasing dollars because they're there, but are really providing the best service they can for the community, and it's based on their volunteer leaders of the board deciding what they should deliver in the way of programs or services, and that sometimes the public funding can adjust priorities and cause an organization to go down a certain road that may not be best for the community in terms of what a nonprofit can provide.
I see someone coming to the microphone. I thought I was going to be forced to ask the next question.
I'm Don Frisbee, a member of the club. Tell us, Sally and Greg, what are the advantages of using the Oregon Community Foundation as a mechanism for philanthropy as compared to other means?
Well, I'll jump in and I'll let Greg answer the technical part of that, but thank you, Don. Don is a former chairman of the board of the Oregon Community Foundation, I'll have to tell you that. But in our push is not to increase philanthropy to the Oregon Community Foundation. Our push is to educate younger people to give money to the charity of their choice or time or their talents, so that when they get to the point where they are doing more estate planning, and want to carry on the love that they have developed through the years in perpetuity, and the perpetuity is a big part of the advantages to giving to the Oregon Community Foundation, but that it's to educate people that there are all these needs and you want to carry them on. There are tax advantages, and there are lots of people who don't want to give. Well, you know, we have this variety of funds. If you, and I'll let you carry that part of it. You go ahead. You do a better job.
Good question, Don. First of all, the foundation's a very efficient operation. Because of the pooling of many funds into one organization, it's like a mutual fund, except it's for charity. So there's efficiencies in the operation of the fund. Our donors get a very good fee structure, low fees. They get excellent support from our staff in terms of carrying out their charitable objectives, and support in terms of identifying what those objectives might be before the gift is made, as well as in carrying out the giving program in perpetuity from the donor's fund. But we need to emphasize that giving to the Community Foundation is not an alternative to giving directly to an individual's favorite charity. The Community Foundation is really a vehicle, as Sally said, for carrying on a discrete individual or family giving program in perpetuity that might be for the general benefit of Oregon, an unrestricted fund, or it might be targeted to support several organizations on an ongoing fashion. And the funds that we administer, that $102 million endowment fund, is growing through an excellent investment program, and it's going to be an even more powerful resource for Oregon in the future through the results of our investment earnings.
I'm Don Sterling, a City Club member. I guess I'll address this to Sally since you're advertised as having webbed feet. I'll make it in the form of an observation that I wonder if you agree with me that there's a tradition in Oregon of not being flashy, and that there are a lot of wealthy people in this state who would rather drive an old Ford than a Cadillac, and that we can even think of instances of people who have made very generous, conspicuous public donations who are criticized for doing it, with their motives were questioned or their flashiness was suggested. Do you ever run into that in your fundraising in Oregon?
We have some anonymous funds, anonymous number 1 and 2 and 3. You know, we have some with no names attached. I think people are more willing to give in their estate planning, to give large amounts, but I agree with you. Many of us are reluctant to disclose what our philanthropic, and that's one of the reasons I think it's hard for people to talk to their children about how much they give, or how they give, or how they make those decisions, because they don't even want their kids to know. So I don't know if we run into, pardon me, I've had hay fever all week. And we were in Eugene yesterday, which didn't help anything. Eugene's the hay fever capital of the world, I think. You answer that, Greg. And that's an order.
We worked this out ahead of time. If she got stuck. Well, I think one of the areas we're trying to encourage the growth of philanthropy and is by leading by example, by individuals who are philanthropic. Paul and Sally McCracken have a fund with us, and they're very humble about that. And I
don't think my children know.
They're very reluctant to talk about that. And I think, Don, what we need to do is encourage people not to brag about their gifts, but to be providing leadership that will inspire others to get involved, and advocating for the responsibility that we all have to increase giving in this state. I think that when a donor wants to create an anonymous fund with us, our first inclination is to try to talk them out of that. And people do respond positively to that. We ran a series of ads, as you know, in the 17 different newspapers in Oregon this last year as part of our 20th anniversary celebration, featuring donors who have established funds with us. And after people got over their initial reluctance to do that, they learned from feedback that they got that it was inspiring others to step forward and maybe get involved in philanthropy. I think what we were saying in our talk was that givers in this state should celebrate their giving, should promote it among their friends, should talk about it with their children so that people can understand what's really happening and why we do live in such a fine state.
Hello, my name's Jordana Tater-Perman. I'm a City Club member. This is a little bit of a different track. More and more public and private institutions are directing their funds based on benchmarks or program outcomes. And what, if anything, is the Oregon Community Foundation doing in this area? And how are you coordinating with other entities in this effort to measurably impact community needs?
You want to take it first? Well, which benchmarks a grant application fits is right on our grant application form. We've adopted the Oregon benchmarks, and we ask people to say, you know, how would your program fit in? Since most of our funding, 50 to 60% goes for nurturing families, children and families, there are a great many benchmarks in that category, and we do ask that question directly. We're hoping to be able to look at how the benchmarks have changed in comparison to how all kinds of giving, how other foundations and our own foundation giving might have changed those in the years as they come along. I think that those are the only measurable ones I know about.
As Sally indicated, we are working very closely with the Oregon Progress Board and have helped with some of their outreach efforts to explain the benchmarks not only to funders but to communities in general, to try to coalesce community activity around some measurable objectives that we need to achieve as a state. We think that's a wonderful vehicle. We've adopted it into our own application process. But we work you also asked, do we work with others? And we make a very sincere effort to try to coordinate funding with and planning efforts with other groups that are addressing critical issues, be those in the arts. So we're involved in Eugene community with Arts Plan project right now that's looking at the future funding and delivery of arts services in the Eugene area. We've also supported Arts Plan 2000 in the Portland area. And I think it's essential, given the limited funds that we've got, both in the public and private sector, that we work together to target the money to some special areas that can really have an impact.
Don Barney, member of the club. You talked about targeting just now, Greg. What have you found in terms of uncovering new contributors to philanthropy that have been most effective in the way of targeted strategies? And related to that, in terms of a couple of boards I've been on, there's always the attraction to working with attorneys and others who assist people in making out bequests. Is that found to be an effective way to target efforts of foundations to reach new people who haven't been in the philanthropy business before?
Sally said yes to the last part of your question. Working with attorneys has been a very effective vehicle for us to increase the funds of the Community Foundation. I know a number of other organizations have done that too. I think there are a lot of efficiencies by working with the estate planning profession is that we can't reach all the people that are out there, but an attorney might have a dozen clients that are potential givers to the community. So it's an efficient way to reach out to the donor community. I think that in terms of unique and exciting fundraising efforts that have tapped new dollars in Oregon, we think that there is wealth moving into Oregon that is not yet engaged in the giving community, and that's occurring in the South Coast area, the Roseburg community, Southern Oregon, Central Oregon, and I think that we have found that lay leaders of nonprofit organizations don't know how to engage that new wealth yet into the giving community. And some have tried and succeeded, but we need to see more of that occurring. And I would say that that's the one opportunity for growth in philanthropy that we see. And our trainings that we're proposing around the state for lay leaders are going to be tailored to the demographic situation of each of those communities. So what's happening in Southern Oregon is quite different than what might be happening in Central Oregon, and we need to factor in those differences as we try to increase philanthropy. I think we're just at the beginning point of looking at that. We also find that lay leaders are also experiencing some burnout in the fundraising field, is that they need some technical help from their staff and from outside sources to understand what the potential is for increasing philanthropy in each of their unique communities. And once they have that information, they can go forth in an intelligent way to increase giving in the state.
Gail, I don't have a question. I just have a statement. I don't think any meeting of City Club featuring the Community Foundation should be complete without recognizing the inspiration, the leadership, and the dedication of the gentleman who was the director of it for so many years. And I think our own City Club member, Ned Lux. Ned, stand up and take a hand.
Ned's had that pole position at a front table on all the years I've been coming to City Club.
I have two questions from the audience. And I'll ask one, and then I'll let you ask yours, and then if we have time, I'll do the last one. The question is, I'm concerned about the increase of elaborate and expensive fundraising events. How do you regard this, number one? And number two, what is a reasonable percent of money goal that should be spent for putting on an event?
That's a can of worms, isn't it? I think, you know, if the only way you can get people to open up their pocketbooks is to have them go to a party, I guess you do that. And I don't know what people say is a standard. I'm kind of appalled when the party costs so much to put on that all that time and effort don't raise a whole lot.
We need to be concerned about that whole issue, no doubt. And in some states, standards have been set. I think that we get concerned when it goes over 50% of the cost. I think that we also have to factor in, though, intangible benefits that arise from auctions and special events of getting volunteers involved in an organization, rallying community pride. And so some of the costs of the fundraising event could be attributed to developing community spirit. And while that money doesn't go back to the organization to support its budget, there are those intangible benefits from those activities, and a simple dollar or percentage amount that we would say is unreasonable, I think, is missing that.
My name's Linda Wright. I'm a member of City Club and also a member of the Business Giving Alliance. We're interested in what other businesses are doing around the state of Oregon. As you traveled around the state, did you come across any innovative giving programs by businesses or innovative ideas for getting involved in the community?
I don't think we've talked to anybody who had one, did we?
Linda, we did not come across any. But that emphasizes the importance of what the Portland Chamber of Commerce is doing, I think, is that it is a leader in this state in terms of developing a program that provides help to businesses who may not be involved in giving to get involved. How do you do it? How much should we be doing? Learning from your peers, as well as it provides the benefit of recognizing businesses who are giving and celebrates that type of philanthropy. We find that businesses do tend to operate in isolation in their giving programs. Businesses are involved perhaps in different organizations, but there is no really outstanding program in Oregon except for the Portland Chamber of Commerce's Business Giving Alliance program, I think.
Since we began our questions with the most fun project, the last question I think we have time for is, what is the most ridiculous grant anyone has ever sought from the Oregon Community Foundation?
A grant that we made? We wouldn't make a ridiculous grant.
I guess the most
Kathleen,
ridiculous.
can you come up with any terrible ones that we've had given to us? I can't. No, they don't get very far if they're too ridiculous. I mean, we have quite a screening process before they even get to. Kathleen sorts them out.
I see.
We had a donor. We had a donor once come to us in the early 80s who wanted us to direct a contribution to the city of Antelope to fight the Rajneesh. And that was probably the longest stretch we went on. We chose to turn down that gift and ask the donor to make the contribution direct. Of course, that was in the days when the Rajneesh had not yet become bad, so.
I think we probably have time for this last question. One more, last question. To what extent do you work with the private foundations to package funding to ensure funding for major projects and capital expenditures?
We're trying to decide who's going to answer that. It's kind of an unwritten rule that you all just do your own thing. I think that it's just like with any kind of when there are a variety of groups doing things, nobody wants anybody else telling them what to do. So I don't think we do package. I think if we see, and I think if other foundations see that we have approved a grant, then that might make them more willing to also step in and do their part. But we basically do not package. We make our own decisions.
The approach the Oregon Community Foundation takes is to look for strong community involvement in the projects we fund, and so in terms of providing guidance to organizations, we want to see strong local funding as well as strong local volunteer involvement, rather than caring about necessarily the packaging or the mix of funding that's in that, other than seeing that strong local support. Because again, our goal is to increase philanthropy in this state, and so encouraging that community support from our grantees is one way that we can accomplish that objective.
Thank you very much to our speakers today, and thank you to Don Barney for the opportunity to be your presiding officer. And in his tradition, I believe we are adjourned.